In all of my underdog drafts and research, these are the 5 players that right now I feel like will make or break fantasy football in 2024. The first player is going to be Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson right now is going in the back end of underdog drafts in the first round. So you're having to take him at pick 11, pick 12. Sometimes he's even fallen to pick 201. And we're talking about Garrett Wilson in the range of being an elite level wide receiver. We're talking about him being right behind A.J. Brown and Puka Nacua in the underdog rankings, right around wide receiver 8. And while I absolutely love Garrett Wilson, we are going into year 3 of Garrett Wilson not putting up wide receiver 1 overall numbers. Now, you will know this about me if you've been tuning into the channel for any bit of time. You see the Garrett Wilson jersey behind me. I am a huge fan. Not only am I a Buckeyes fan, but I'm a Garrett Wilson fan. And if we look at Garrett Wilson's overall target share the last 2 years, it screams Garrett Wilson being an absolute stud if he can get some quarterback help. 168 targets last year, 147 targets the year before this. These are the splits when he had Zach Wilson versus any other quarterback in this offense. And we can see that when he didn't have Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson performed incredibly well. Now we add in the fact that Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback that he's ever played with in his life. We started to see the flashes last preseason. It makes me super excited for Garrett Wilson, but I'm not going to say that there is no risk with Garrett Wilson involved, because he does have a ton of risk, because even though he did have 147 targets as a rookie, he had 168 targets as a sophomore in the NFL. He still only put up 12.5 fantasy points per game, finished as the wide receiver 30 as a rookie on a points per game basis, wide receiver 32 as a sophomore. So there's a lot of reason to be a little concerned about Garrett Wilson. He's going to make or break your fantasy team. I'm going to have him on plenty of my rosters because I think the upside's the absolute moon. I think Garrett Wilson has top 3 points per game, wide receiver 3 in his range of outcomes. And I know it's a big major shot to take, but when you're in the late round of your first round, you got to take some chances on a guy that can be a league winner like some of those guys at the top. So absolutely love some Garrett Wilson as my first player who will make or break fantasy football in 2024. My second player that can make or break fantasy football in 2024 is going to be Drizzy Drake London for the Atlanta Falcons. And the thing is, with the Atlanta Falcons and Drizzy Drake, same exact thing with Garrett Wilson, where Drizzy Drake's been getting a little bit of the target share, but he didn't have a quarterback. He had Desmond Ridder throwing him the ball the last 2 years. And while the exciting part of it is that not only do you have Kirk Cousins gets added with the massive contract, you also get Michael Penix that gets drafted with a top 10 pick. The redraft community is going absolutely berserk with Drizzy Drake London, where he's coming off the board as wide receiver 10, overall player 14. So when we're in the second round of our drafts and we kind of have to look at these options, we're talking about guys like a Drake London, a Jonathan Taylor, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, Nico Collins, Devontae Adams, Jalen Waddle, Saquon Barkley. And as much as there's a lot to like with a lot of these guys, there's a lot of question marks. I really haven't remembered a year where the second round feels pretty hit or miss. And Drake London starts off that second round feeling really hit or miss. And this is why I think he's either going to make or break fantasy football, because if Drizzy Drake, with the target share that he's been able to command over the last 2 years, where last year 109 targets wasn't great in the 16 games, the year before that 117, but you have to understand that he had 109 targets. It was wide receiver 24 on a target, wide receiver 25 on a target share. He had 23% target share in an Arthur Smith offense that just wasn't throwing the ball. I think I'm going to have to draft a little bit of Drizzy Drake London this year. And I really, like I said, I love some Garrett Wilson. I can talk myself into that with the Aaron Rodgers. We saw the target share, but Drizzy Drake's like a poor man's Garrett Wilson. And that's what makes me a little bit concerned about Drizzy Drake. So I think he's either going to make your fantasy football team, he's going to break it, but you're going to have to take the risk, because if he absolutely hits, we're talking about Drake London being a top 8, top 7 fantasy wide receiver. And that's why he's going where he's going. I wish we were getting a little bit more of a discount on Drake London, but he is going to make or break your fantasy team in 2024. My third player that will make or break your fantasy football team in 2024 is going to be Isaih Pacheco. Isaih Pacheco's coming off the board as RB11, overall player 47 on underdog. And so you're having to draft him in the 4th round. And to be completely honest, last year we were talking about Isaih Pacheco being a dead zone running back, someone that you were able to take in the 5th or 6th round. He's getting that 4th round boost, even though last year running back 14 on a points per game basis, 15.3 fantasy points per game. And the best thing that happened for Isaih Pacheco this year is Isaih Pacheco is the clear RB1 in the Kansas City Chiefs backfield, and they did not bring anybody else in to compete with him. We got guys like a CEH, who's maybe the clear RB2 right now for the Kansas City Chiefs. We got a guy like Prince. He's an undrafted rookie. There's a lot of question marks behind Isaih Pacheco, which leans into the fact that Isaih Pacheco, who last year had 205 rushing attempts, there is reason to believe that he could get up to 210, 215 in this Kansas City Chiefs offense, especially if we're projecting that the Kansas City Chiefs offense is going to be explosive, getting back to those years where they had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, where this year as a receiving options, you have Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, a lot of good options, which could lead for them to be up in the second half of games. games, which is going to lead for Isaih Pacheco, who's always had great yards per carry. He had a 4.9, 4.6 the last 2 years to really start to excel. And last year, the one thing I wanted to add, Isaih Pacheco did have 44 receptions. The year before that only had 13. So I wonder how the receptions are going to play a part into this, especially if you are playing in a PPR, half PPR format, whether he can still get the level of receptions, but there's no one behind him. I think Isaih Pacheco is a clear 3-down workhorse that you're getting in the 4th round, which typically doesn't happen. So I do like Isaih Pacheco, but we're going to have to see if he's going to make or break your team because it is great value. I do think there is a little bit of worry on if he can redo that with the receptions and if he can still get the rushing attempts. I'm all in on it, but we'll have to see because I think he could be a make or break for your fantasy football rosters in 2024. My 4th make or break player is going to be Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray, absolute Konami code quarterback, where right now on Underdog, he's going off the board as QB7. Overall player 81. And I just want to kind of bring this up about Kyler Murray. Last year, he had 244 rushing yards off of year 1 off an ACL, which is absolutely crazy. The year before that, he hasn't gone under 400 yards. So we're talking about Kyler Murray going to be able to get to the back to getting around 400 rushing attempts. And when we're talking about him being able to throw 3 to 3.5K yards and somewhere run around 400 yards, like we're talking about Kyler Murray has at least top 5 to top 4 quarterback overall upside. And I think it's crazy. My worry is how good is this overall Arizona Cardinals offense going to be? I believe it's going to be make or break because I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is that dude. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. is going super high up the draft boards right now on Underdog. We had Trey McBride, who had his massive breakout. Can he even break out further? We get Trey Benson, James Conner in the backfield. You add in a guy like Zay Jones to go with Michael Wilson. Kyler Murray has all of the options and weapons that he could need to succeed. I think it's going to be huge, and I think he's going to make your fantasy football team because you don't have to take him as early as a guy like a Jalen Hurts. You don't have to take him as early as a guy like Lamar Jackson, but you do get that same type of upside with Kyler Murray going down the board at QB7. I just hope he doesn't rise up in value. I think it could be make or break, and I will be putting a ton of my eggs into the Kyler Murray basket in the Underdog leagues, in redraft leagues going forward. And my 5th player that's going to be make or break for fantasy football in 2024 is going to be none other than Kyle Pitts. And we talked about Drizzy Drake London before this, and a lot of those same takes apply for Kyle Pitts. Benefit of having a better quarterback, cool, check mark. The worry has been is that Kyle Pitts hasn't been able to show his elite self since that amazing rookie season that he had 2 years ago. So now we're going into year 4 of Kyle Pitts, and Kyle Pitts is currently going off the board at 10-6. He's going ahead of a guy like a George Kittle, behind a guy like Dalton Kincaid, and both those guys have kind of shown that they have flashes and can put up consistent fantasy football points, where we think Kyle Pitts has that ultimate level upside. We saw that tight end 11 upside back as a rookie, but the last 2 years, 7.6 fantasy points per game, 8.1 fantasy points per game. My question is, can he get back to 110 targets? Can that even exceed? Are they going to be throwing the ball a lot more now that Arthur Smith's out of this offense, where we could be talking about Kyle Pitts being an 115, 120 target tight end? And especially when we're talking about this tight end landscape, if you miss out on those top 4 to 5 guys and you're stuck deciding between Kyle Pitts or George Kittle, which of those guys is going to be able to give you similar type upside? I mean, I think it's going to be Kyle Pitts. And I'm going to say this. You fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me 3 times, I'm the idiot. This is going to be the 3rd time that I'm in on Kyle Pitts, and I may never draft him again if he lets me down this year. But I am all in on Kyle Pitts. I'm pretty pumped to see what he can do in 2024 fantasy football. So let me know down below. What do you think of these players? Are they make or break for your fantasy football teams in 2024? Are you going to be drafting them? We're putting out a bunch more content this week. We've got a bunch of Underdog drafts coming back up. So if you haven't used code Caleb100 to sign up to Underdog, make sure you do that. You get a special pick'em. They match 50% of your deposit up to $250. So it's super exciting that if you guys want to come draft with us, we're doing a bunch of $3 drafts. Want to see it in there. It's a lot of fun as you're prepping for your redraft leagues. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.